We're still talking about the quadratic formula, and we're going to do a different example. Now, not every quadratic equation is going to be set equal to 0 when you first see it. So we're going to show you how we can take one that's not set equal to 0 and still solve it using the quadratic formula. Remember, once again, the purpose of using the quadratic formula is so that we can find the values of the variable that will, when we substitute it into the quadratic equation, it will equal out to 0. Graphically, we're just finding out the values that the values on the graph where it crosses the x-axis. That's the simplicity of it. So the solution to these quadratic equations is just telling us where the graph crosses the x-axis or intersects the x-axis. So look at this example. So let's say example 2, I have 2x squared. I have minus 3x minus 15, and that equals to 5, okay? Now, we have to first of all set this equal to 0 before we can find out what a, b, and c is. So I want to take this 5 and take it to this side. So I want to subtract 5 from both sides right there. All right, so this gives me 2x squared minus 3x minus 20, and it equals 0 because 5 minus 5 equals 0. So now in this case, we have a is equal to 2, b is equal to negative 3, and then c is equal to negative 20, okay? This is very, very important. A equals b. Remember, a is the coefficient of x squared, b is the coefficient of x, and c is the constant. Now, it's not going to always be x. It might be any variable, but a is going to be the coefficient of the squared variable, b is going to be the coefficient of the variable to the first power, and c is going to be the constant, okay? Now, here we go. Let's go ahead and plug these in. So when we plug these in, let's use a different color as a matter of fact. Hopefully this color is going to work. So let's say we have negative and b is equal to 3. So the opposite of negative 3 plus or minus the square root of negative 3 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 20. Okay? And we want to put that all over 2 times negative, 2 times 2. All right? 2a. So we have all of our variables plugged in. Now let's go ahead and calculate it. So here, so we're going to go from here to here. We're going to say the opposite of negative 3 is 3. Okay, so plus or minus, we have negative 3 squared is 9 minus 8 times negative 20. All right, so, and that's all over 2 times 2 is 4. That's simple. So let's continue plugging these numbers in. So let's continue calculating. 9 plus, because the negative times a negative, 160 over 4, which equals to 3 or 3. Plus or minus the square root of 169 all over 4. All right. Now, the square root of 169 is 13. So this part right here, so if the square root of 169 equals 13, then I have 3 plus 13 over 4, and I also have 3 minus 13 over 4. All right. So those are my two separate answers. So 3 plus 13 equals 16 over 4, which is simply just 4. So that's our first solution. All right. And then 3 minus 13 equals negative 10 over 4, which simplifies to negative 5 over 2. So we have 4. Our values of x in this case are 4 and negative 5 halves. This tells me that when I graph this parabola, or when I graph this quadratic equation right here, the graph is going to intersect the x-axis when x equals 4 and when x equals negative 5 over 2. It also tells me that if I plug in 4 or negative 5 over 2, here in the original equation, it's going to balance out. And I'll get 5 on the left side, 5 on the right side. But if we do it in this version, if I plug in 4 or negative 5 over 2, it's going to set it equal to 0. Remember, when we solve equations, the whole purpose is for us to get the same value on the left side of the equal sign that we have on the right side of the equal sign. All right? Do me a big favor. If you like this video, click that thumbs up down there for me. Also, feel free to comment on the videos. I appreciate your support. And do me one great big favor by going to my website, www.younggurusmathtutoring.com. Submit a review, comment, like, subscribe on Facebook as well as on YouTube, and we're on Instagram. Young Gurus Math Tutoring, I still have the solution to your math problems.